and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes of September 16th.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion.
Hey,
All in
John.
favor? Hi, John.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Good.
John, how
We're
you
just
doing?
approving the minutes from the 16th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Chairman's comments, I'll forego those till later in the meeting. Finance member comments? Nope. Citizens comments?
You have none.
Okay. Update from Scranton Library on the building status and operations. So I think who's here?
I'm gonna, yeah, Nicole and Sunny. So I'm gonna
Okay,
move them
Great,
both
thank you.
and Rick Davis.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, everyone. Good. Okay. I have a lot of information to share, so I'm going to try to talk fast.
Take your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I thought I would start with a summary of the last fiscal year, 1920. This is the little summary sheet we sent you, just so you know, I'm not going to go top to bottom, but just so you know which paperwork I'm referencing. For fiscal year 1920, the library was basically on budget with a small loss of $1,272. So we met our budget with a margin of error of 0.1%. Expenses exceeded budget by $30,000, largely related to the pension plan, and then final taxes on the 24 Wall Street property. This shortfall was offset by fundraising of $128,000, which exceeded our budgeted goal by $29,000. There is the note, you see the note here, that while it was received in fiscal year 1920, the $150,000 released by the Board of Finance, which had been set aside for ramping up the new building in the fourth quarter of that year, when COVID delayed that completion of the building, and therefore the scheduled July 1st opening, that 150 was carried over into the current fiscal year, as recommended by Fillmore. We can talk more about that later. I also wanted to note our original plan was to hire new staff members in that fourth quarter, so that we could train them and have them help us move back into the building. So obviously we had to change those plans too. What we did is we hired a few positions in June, about 2 weeks prior to the reopening. Those positions were the teen librarian, the children's librarian, and a part-time administrative assistant. Those were positions that already existed that had been vacant for quite some time, and also 2 library assistants who work in the circulation department. Those staff members have made it possible for us to do the takeout service, providing library services over the phone and email about 38 hours a week, helping patrons use online resources, get library cards, tech help, virtual programs, all that good stuff. The positions that we left vacant with an anticipated hire date in January of 2021 are 2 adult services librarians that are part-time, 2 custodians that will be part-time, and 1 more assistant for the children's room. Hiring those staff members will allow us to expand both hours and services, and I'll talk more about that when we get to the current fiscal year. So then,
So can we ask questions? Hi, it's Ken. Can we ask questions as you're doing this, or do you want us to wait till the end?
totally up to you.
Why don't we do the one, let's do it at the end of each fiscal year. So if we finish from last year's budget, let's talk about that and then we'll talk about the current. How's that?
Sure. It's up on the screen, so yeah.
Kenny, go ahead.
Yeah, so at the time that you requested the 150 for that fiscal period, did you anticipated using those funds for that period? Is that correct?
Yes, so I sent over, I resent that request over to Jean and Stacy yesterday, I think. So yes, so that funding was for salaries during the fourth quarter, and then library materials, supplies, postage and printing, additional insurance that was needed, facility supplies, and grand reopening funds. So when I spoke with Fillmore about the budget cut for the current fiscal year, he said it would be appropriate to carry those funds over into the current fiscal year as part of a way of making up for that $174,000 cut. However, as I told him at the time, those expenses, the majority of those expenses followed us as well. So other than the bulk of the salaries, we only had half of those for 2 weeks instead of the full amount expected. The rest of the expenses have all followed us. We're still reopening the library. We're just doing it in the current fiscal year. And, it's a phased reopening instead of reopening all at once.
So it will be recorded as revenue in the 1920 budget.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's not, you're not carrying over the 150, then it's going to remain in 1920, and then the additional 150.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I said that.
For 2021 brings you full.
No, I'm sorry. I may have misunderstood the question. So the 150 is being carried over and counted as income in the current fiscal year because we didn't want to count it as income twice. So it's noted here, but it's counted as income.
I don't think you can do that. Want to ask Stacy, can you do that?
I would think, I understand your point, Sonny, but I would think when the auditors
Do
come
it
in,
your way.
the
Hold on,
150
Kenny.
the 150 would be recorded as revenue in 1920 because it was received in 1920 from the town. It will then get closed.
Then the other option would be on the current fiscal year to have it recorded as library generated funds versus town carryover. We had debated that back and forth because it can't be counted as income from the town in two separate fiscal years.
I think you have to record it as income from the town in 1920, Sonny, and then it would be closed into net assets. And then if you wanted to offset the 2021, if that was your purpose, you can do it that way. But I think the mechanics, the revenue was received in 1920, it will be recorded as revenue. You'll probably show the profit of 148, which will get closed into net assets, which will make it available for you for 2021. I know I'm very technical, but that's the way.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would be
It's a cleaner way to
recorded
do it.
in 2021, it would be recorded as a net asset.
It will still be revenue in 1920 though. I
From
think
like
it
the
has
general,
to be.
if you want to say it.
What?
John, I
If the
didn't hear what
money
you
came in
said.
in- So if the money came in 20, right? So you guys are all right. If the money came in 20, it has to be recorded in 20. And Stacy, I think what you're saying is when fiscal 20 ends, they're going to have a surplus of 148, right? And then you can record that revenue coming from your reserve fund in fiscal
Coming from the
21.
reserve fund. Got it.
It will
Okay.
just offset the
It'll just-
expenditures.
Right. So I guess that's my concern. It's not generally the way the town does business. So generally that money at the end of the fiscal
You
year
Go back to the town.
would go back to the town. So I'm not comfortable with that money being rolled over. I'm also a little concerned because when I look at this, it means the town paid 93% of your operational budget, of your total budget.
If we record it, if we record it in last fiscal year, then the percentage is 93% for last year, and your percentage received during this year would go down to 65% of our budget for the current fiscal year.
Yeah, so
If it's recorded, if
Right.
it's taken out of last year, the way we have it now, then last year your portion was 80%, and this year, if we included the 150, your percentage would be 73% for this current year.
But I don't think we can take it out, can we?
Yeah, so what we can do, first of all, I think moving forward, the whole point I think we were trying to make with the library is you cannot use town funds as, in essence, it's a savings. So you're taking the money that we gave you and not, I mean, it's just the way it is. It's not an intent of anything. And then move it over. And in essence, you're starting up the 150 and you really can't do that.
Okay,
So I think
at the time when I had spoken to Fillmore, that was exactly what he told me to do. And he said very specifically that it would be used to temper the $174,000 budget cut that the town was giving us for this current year. So my apologies if that was not correct,
Right.
but
No,
that
that's
is what
okay.
I was told.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah, no
So
problem.
Now the question becomes, what happens with that 150? So, you also have the loan, right? So how much was your loan that you took?
The PPP loan?
Yeah.
So the loan was for 117. That was also received last year in the fourth quarter and expended. It had a short timeline of when it could be spent. So it was spent on payroll last year. It is currently considered a liability because it's a loan and not income.
So, but there is a chance that that's going to be forgiven.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We are
Gene,
expecting
if I
that
could
it
jump
will
in
be.
here.
Go ahead, John.
If I could jump in. Yeah, so that loan, and they extended that, just so you know, until December. So if you
Yes.
expended it
Yeah.
for payroll and 25% for these, so there's probably a very good chance that you don't have to pay that back. That's what
Right.
Sorry, that's expended.
No, I appreciate that, John. So I
So-
guess that's
so
where
what-
I'm going. I'm concerned that you didn't spend the 150. So that was carried over, and again, that was what you were told, but we're going to figure that out. Then you've got this loan that you didn't expect on top of it. So there's an awful lot of money. And then when you look at the town paying 93% of the budget, we got to start saying, we're trying to reel back everyone else. And I'll give you an example. Board of Ed had a special appropriation request come in. They then got their CARES money and they pulled back their request because they had the money. So I just want to treat everybody the same way. So I have to say that, it's early, it's October. We don't know. I agree with John. Chances are you're not going to have to pay the 117 back. We don't know yet. You have this 150 above and you didn't use it, which I understand why, but you didn't use it. So I think at this point, what I would suggest is that the town, until you pay, and Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, we can withhold giving money until you spend, which is what we did with the Board of Ed, until you spend that 150. Show us that you spent the 150. And not, again, we have this conversation with the library all the time. You can't spend all our money and then spend yours, because that's where we're coming into the problem. So I think we've got to figure out, and I know there's an agreement going back and forth with you guys and the town, but I think we have to figure out a way, because these numbers are too high during a pandemic when we're trying to make sure that the school has money, we're trying to make sure the ambulance has the money, we're trying to make sure the fire has the money. And we just can't, and the senior center, meals, so we can't justify this to the public. So, and again, if we're treating everybody the same way, then, 93% is way too high. And
let me be clear about the percentages though. So if we account for the 150 in the last fiscal year and take it out of the accounting for this fiscal year, then the town's portion of the current fiscal year goes down to 65%. So averaged out, that would be 80% last year and 80% this year. So it,
but we
it
can't
still
right.
falls below. it's still, even if you consider it as part of last year's accounting, it would still fall below that 85% that we have talked
In
about
an
the
average,
conversation.
in an
So,
average.
Right,
Gee,
right.
Could I
We
jump in here one
can't
more time?
average out fiscal years.
Well, okay, then, so this fiscal year, it would be only 65% of our budget would come from the town. So that's, we
Right,
can
and
talk
last,
about that.
right, so the problem's the 150.
Yeah,
And the
could I jump
prob-
into
go
for?
ahead. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead,
just
John.
for a second, and I don't want to disagree with what you said, withholding the money. I think a much cleaner way of doing this is at the end of like the Board of Ed, when they're done with their budget and it's audited and they have 250, it comes back to the town. Each
Right.
budget should be
Yes.
separate, here's what we do. And then I just think that's a much
That's
better way
fine.
of doing
No,
it.
no, I'm just saying
That's
it's already
right.
been given, so I'm fine with that.
Right.
If you want to get the 150 back, I'm totally fine with that. I'm trying to find a way in which they don't have to cut a check back to us for 150, but I'm totally fine with that if they give it back to us.
And I'm
Right,
thinking more
and then-
in the
At
future.
this point, given the advice that we received from our liaison, we've been planning for that to be a part of our budget for the past approximately 6 months.
And this is, all I'm trying to say is going forward, right?
Yeah, it's
for the
a
next
very
budget,
fair
we should-
conversation to have. Yep.
We should have it, and it should kind of be policy. At the end of your fiscal year, it's audited. If you have 25,000 left over, it goes, whatever it is, it goes back to the town, each budget, and that's how you do it, just like the Board of Ed and every other entity. I'm not
Right.
saying, Gene, you have
I
to do
agree
it
with
now,
that,
maybe your
John.
way's better. But
It's
And one other thing
definitely a conversation that we should have, and it's a conversation that we have started to have previously.
Yeah, I was going to
Unlike-
say that, John. We've already
Yeah.
had this conversation.
Yeah. And we do. It is something we need to hash out. We know we need to because the conversation keeps coming up. So we need to, kind of have a final determination. One of the differences between our situation and the town departments is that we have the ability to fundraise for that last 15%. And I know our donors don't give to the library expecting any excess fundraised funds to go to the town. So another
But
option
again,
that we need
that's,
to
Sunny,
take-
that's not true. It's money we gave you. It's not excess funds from fundraising to come back. It's money we gave you. You requested it in
This year,
February.
yes.
You got it March 17th. We were already in quarantine March 17th. You didn't use the funds. So you are not returning funds at your fundraising. So I
No,
don't
no.
want that misconversation to go out.
No, I didn't mean for this current year. I meant that's the conversation that we need to have about setting policy for every year going forward.
So I think we had the conversation. So that's my concern. We did talk about this ad nauseum, and so that's my concern. So right now, the problem is you rolled over taxpayers' money to next year. Your base has been upped. So the 150 will go in, your base is up. And now we got to say, if you didn't use the funds as any other town department, you don't get to save taxpayers' money for a following year. It's just not, it's not the way the town works. It's not good practice. So that becomes where I am right now with that 150.
Gene,
Let's just peel that back a little bit for Sunny so she understands. If you were to roll over the 150, it would inflate your budget. So your new baseline would be $150,000 more than the 1.2 that it would have been had you not rolled the money over. Does that make sense?
It'd be 150 or 1.4, not 1.5.
I don't know what that means, but I think it was 1.24 change, and then there would, with that additional 150, rolling it over, it inflates it up by that 150. So the new baseline is 150 more than it should be.
$1.4 million, yeah. Gene, let me
Right.
jump in a little bit. I'm looking at the statement that was provided to us of this
Yep,
big statement and so forth.
yep.
I'm looking over in the sort of the yellow colored area where it shows your proposed budget of, or excuse me, your forecast for this year, which is 250, says library generated funds, 257,000. And then down below, right below that, it says Town of Madison, 1,248,000, and then another line, the 150. If we, and there's two ways to look at this. If we look at the 150 as being sort of a one-time appropriation to help things get started moving in and whatnot, then that would suggest that, and again, taking away that 150, that the library generated funds of 257,000 is 17% of their total income. If you don't take that approach, if you say, okay, the 150 is part of the ongoing expense, then the library generated funds of 257,000 is like 15% of the total.
Fillmore, can I ask Sunny to share that document so people can see what you're talking, because I think it's
Yep.
important what you're saying.
Absolutely.
So I guess, yeah, while she's doing that,
Yeah, go ahead, Fillmore.
yeah, I guess my question is, how secure are you with that library generated funds number of 257,000?
Yeah, is Nicole, are you able to jump in and talk about that? Is she?
Yeah, I'm here, Sunny.
Okay, great.
Hi. Yeah, I think that's a fair question, and we've evaluated the risks of our fundraising numbers for this year. The biggest risk to that number is going to be fundraising events because of the inability to gather in large numbers. The events committee of our development committee is looking at various ways of raising those funds, and they have some good ideas that I believe are very viable. So I'm confident that we will raise those funds, at least the 176,000 for fundraising, definitely.
But
Is
again,
that on top of the because I know that you guys had a little bit of a delta for your portion of the construction cost from a fundraising perspective. Is that correct? Were you a little bit shy on finalizing that piece of it as well?
I have a summary of that coming up too.
Sunny,
But I'm asking,
can
is
you
that
just move
piece
to the right a little?
is that
Yes.
piece on top of this 257? I guess is my question. So are there two different pieces of fundraising that you're needing to go after to make it whole?
We have our capital campaign.
Yeah.
Is $138,000 short
Okay.
of the $6 million that we needed to raise. This 176,000 is for operating. So there are two separate fundraising campaigns. The capital campaign, which should finish at the end of this calendar year, and the operating fundraising, which is currently happening.
Thank you. That was helpful. Thank you. And again, you feel confident that you'll be able to hit both of those targets?
I do. We're making a lot of changes to how we approach some of our fundraising, changes to the appeal. We've already implemented some of those, and we have others that are coming in December. The events committee feels strongly that we can hold virtual events or non-event events to raise those funds.
Mm-hmm. And I had jotted down some numbers. For the past 2 consecutive years, the development committee has exceeded their fundraising goals for both of those years. And fortunately, they do have already 1 year of experience turning an in-person event into a virtual event, because our largest fundraiser of the year is in April. So it turned into a virtual auction last year. And I believe didn't you guys exceed your goal for that fundraising event as well?
Yes.
As well as your overall goal?
You know,
Yes.
2 years ago, so we've exceeded our fundraising now for the last 2 years. There wasn't a good development plan in place about 3 years ago. So 2 years ago, that plan was put together and we've been implementing it and we've been growing. So a lot of the smaller fundraisers just continue to increase and increase as we get ahead of them, as we promote them, as our community becomes familiar with them. So that's why I've seen the numbers growing.
So,
That's
so
good.
I
So do you-
applaud, hold on, Kenny. So I applaud the fundraising, and honestly, I'm not trying to be difficult. I need to get back to the operations. That's really what I'm worried about.
Sure.
So, and again, and I mean it sincerely, Nicole and Sunny, I'm just trying to figure out how, when we justify this, when we have an audit, when people are asking where the funds are going, I just need to be sure that I can explain that. So, I guess, I don't know, John, do you want to talk about this a little bit more?
In terms of how we should
What you
do
were-
it?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure. I mean, to me, and that's why I was talking about how the other departments do it. And we got to come up with some agreement going forward. But at the end of the fiscal year, when it's audited, whatever's left over, if it's left over, should go back to the town, regardless of fundraising, because that's part of their budget. And each
Right.
budget should be separate. And so fiscal 21 would have little to do with fiscal 20 in terms of the money coming or going. You wouldn't do what we may be doing now. And Sonny, I'm talking about going forward. We got to have a plan going forward.
Got
I
it.
just think that's a better way to do it. That's a better way for the auditors. When you start,
right. It's
you know,
cleaner.
holding back money or you start commingling in the fiscal years, it becomes an issue.
John, that's what I was going to ask you. So is it a matter of not commingling the funds and they keep whatever the percentages are, that the town's funds are kept to that portion towards the operating expenses? Is it that type of math equation that they're leveraging on a budget over the course of month to month? Does
I'm
it get
trying
that
to follow you.
granular?
Yeah, I'm trying to follow that.
So for example, if it's a call it an 85-15 split, and our portion of the budget is X amount of dollars, and our money at the 15 and their money at vice versa. Ours at 85 and theirs at 15, and kind of doing it the whole way through the year. So they're not commingling the funds to get that granular.
Yeah, I don't think, no, I think it's more of, let's pick an operating budget. It's $1.5 million, and we decide as a board, Gene, I've heard you say this 1,000 times. Obviously, you're going to help them. You're not going to let them,
Right.
not exist, right? But let's say we
Right.
give $1.2 million, Ken, that's it. It's how it's spent, but it doesn't mean that they fundraise $350 and now all of a sudden they feel like they're giving us fundraising money back. That's not how
Right.
it works. And
No,
that's the point I'm
Yeah,
trying to
no,
get to.
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
It's not that granular where they can't commingle the funds in the budget year. That's what they're doing. That's part of their budget, right? They put in
But not
50%.
year over year.
Right. It's taking fiscal 20 and putting it into fiscal 21 without approval, for lack of better terms. And that's why I think we're much better off at the end of the fiscal year. It's whatever's
Right.
left is audited. It goes to the town, just like every other department. And we need to
Right.
have that agreement in place, Sonny. And
Right,
you all know this.
so, but I will say it's still gonna cause some problems between the 1920 and the 2021. So I think we do have to get the 150 back to clean up the books for the auditors. And then, as John just said, I'm not objecting to giving you money, but we have to make sure it's clean on the books. So if you need the money, you come back. And I think we've had a proven track record, we'll do it, but we got to clean it up for the auditors. So you have to give us back essentially the 150.
And I also think we need to have something in place going forward so we don't.
Correct.
Nobody
I
runs
agree,
into this
John.
again.
Right.
We definitely need to have something in place going forward. We have, once I get to this fiscal year, well, here I am. I have a whole summary prepared, but you'll see we had started spending that funds based on my understanding of what I was supposed to do. We spent it only on the exact thing that we had approved by you guys. It's highlighted here.
You know what, Sunny, though, but you're closed. So I'm sorry, we have to clean it up for the auditors. So I understand what you're saying, but you've been closed. So the 150 has to come back to the town.
We're not
And-
closed. We're not closed. We are offering library services 38 hours a week.
Okay.
Do you want me to go back to my update? Because I can give you more details on
No,
it.
when I say you're closed, you've been closed, you are doing services, but you still have to give back the town the 150 because we have to do it for the auditing. If you need the money, you can come back within the next fiscal year, meaning the one we're in now, and we can, you can request it the same way you've done, but you can't keep the 150 that you've rolled over. So I mean, again, I'm not trying to say you're not using it for the right thing. I'm not saying you're not doing the right thing. I'm just telling you from the town's perspective and the auditors, we need the 150 back because you did not spend it. And now moving forward, it alters the budget and it alters the spending, it alters the revenue, it alters everything. And then there's not a clear cut of one fiscal year to the next. So you can ask your board, you can talk to them if you need to. But we have auditors that we have to answer to. We have taxpayers we have to answer to. So I think, and this is not something, we don't have to continue to have the conversation right now. But I do think it's again, it's unfortunate that it went down this way, and I understand that. But because of how it skews the numbers for the rest of the fiscal year, again, we're not saying you can't have the money. We're just saying you can't keep the money from 2019, which what the money was for when you requested at the end of February. We approved it on March 17th. You got the money for the fourth quarter for salaries. You didn't use it. So therefore that has to come back, because if you just carry it over, it's going to skew next year's.
Can I ask a couple of questions, Jane? I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understand the auditor situation here, because we gave them the money last year, and
But they can't save our money, Fillmore.
well,
It's not what the money was for. The money was for the fourth quarter, and we can go back. Stacy, do you have the request?
but that's not an auditing situation. That's not an auditing.
Well, it is in terms of as we start at the end of the fiscal year, how you record those funds, it is.
I would say more of the issue is, the 150 was agreed upon between everybody that it was for fiscal year 1920. To Fillmore's point, there has been profits in the past and it has been closed into net assets, and that has been used to offset future budgets. So if anything, if the 150 does stay in net assets, it could be used to offset the 21-22 budget. But
I'm okay with that, but then it offsets that.
Yeah, but I do think that arrangement is a little bit tricky here as far as a reporting. And just to back up, we have no choice but to record the revenue in 1920. So it's going to be there. It's going to get closed into net assets, like John said. The question is how you want to treat that. Do we want to, ask for it to be reimbursed? Do we want to reduce it from the 2021 payments, or do we want to ask the library to offset the request for 21-22? So I think we have a few options.
Well, why don't we ask the library what might be best for them, and then we can work together to figure out, within those three options, what we can solve for resolving the issue.
Stacy, this is
Rick.
Sense?
Hi, Rick.
Stacy, hi. I just have a technical question. The money was budgeted last year as a contingency, right?
Correct.
So if it goes back into last year, which is fine, then it is basically that contingency was not used. But in this current fiscal year, there is no contingency budgeted. So does that create a problem for the town? Because it would be a special appropriation of some sort, right?
If we were going to use that 150 for this year, yeah, I believe that would be considered a special appropriation. The 150 was paid and received in 1920. So it's revenue in 1920, no matter what. It was an expense for the town, revenue for the library. If the library is looking to apply that 150 to 2021, I would recommend going a special appropriation route or offset the current budget which would not impact the base going forward.
Right.
Or you can offset a future budget, which would
Right.
impact the base.
Yeah, so
Okay,
right
so that
now,
doesn't
the-
create
is
an
to
issue for the-
avoid to impact the base is what, I don't want to change your base. I want to
Yeah.
keep that where it's supposed to be. That's not, so that's why I'm not sure what the best way then is.
Yeah, so if that's the case, and Rick and Jean, I think you're in the same place, you don't want to offset the 21-22 budget because 22-23, now we're 150
No.
lower than
Yeah,
we
That's
really
the-
should be, and we worked hard to get up that 300.
I'd rather
1,000
have it
back.
clean. Yeah, I'd rather have it clean. in the
Yeah.
long
That's
run, because
right.
that way it allows us to look at the expenses and the.
Moving forward, yes.
By 15%.
I agree. I think the cleanest way would be John's way to either, return the 150 or Jean's recommendation to reduce some of the payments for this year. It's not going to impact the budget base
Right.
going forward, but at least the 150 would be cleaned out and move forward. Going forward, we'd be at the right base.
Well, if you take the 150 back, then we would then, at this point, knowing what we know now, we would then come back to the town pretty quickly with a request for special appropriations.
Yeah, and it's October. Who knows what's going on, with the pandemic. There's so many unknowns right now, and we can certainly take it month to month. Or
Right,
we could wait until the end of the year and then reduce the last 2 months.
right. Well, I think
Yeah,
what we
it's
would,
whatever, if
Yeah.
the cash flow becomes the issue, Rick,
yeah,
then perhaps the better way to do it is to wait and just reduce the payments for this year so that you're not limiting your cash flow.
right. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
back
want
to
to speak for the
normal, right.
board.
And then the other thing too, Rick, right, is Rick, you don't know about how that loan's going to play out with that liability on the books from the state. So
Right,
that
and
could
that's
be
part of the
some
cash flow issue.
newfound money as well.
Yeah, that's another issue though, Ken, that you brought up. I mean, that money is used for 25% of lease or rent payments and mostly payroll. And if you had this money, they got that money to offset. So that money was the 117 that Sonny said you guys is for payroll. That actually is probably one of the reasons they need the 150, and that's what it's there for. But it helps if that money, the 150 wasn't there. Maybe, Gene, I don't know. Maybe again, I'm all about going forward. So what are we going to do in the future? But maybe this is at least some sort of legislation, by the Board of Finance, recognizing this as a unique
Yeah.
situation, something like that to help them. I know, like I said, Gene said it and everybody said it, Fillmore,
Yeah.
Peggy.
Well,
everyone.
maybe if I could just weigh in real quickly
Go
here.
Well,
because,
hold on, Peggy, can you just, okay,
well-
let me just, okay.
it's just about the memorandum of understanding that would clarify a lot of this. We do have a draft that was sent to the library liaisons, Fillmore, as well as Scott Murphy, that does kind of lay this out. And it's all about the future, right? Making sure that everybody has an understanding of how things are going to be accounted for, and how funds would be calculated to be returned to the town. So there's a draft agreement that I hope to send over to the library in the next couple of weeks. And this is basically updating, what had been in place for many years, but with the bonding and everything, we recognized that the document needed to be updated. So it will be addressed through an MOU. And Fillmore, I welcome your comments on it. And once we kind of get input, I think what's good about the discussion tonight is that I think that the Board of Finance members will be pleased with some of the protections that are put into place for the town as well as for the library so that they can budget accordingly going forward. So hopefully that draft will be going out here in the next couple of weeks to the library board.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I think-
So Rick, I guess what you, with your board, look at in terms of the finance, and Nicole, is if you want it to be, I would think from my perspective, if I were you, I'd rather not give up the 150 all at once. I'd rather kind of see what happens so your cash flow doesn't. So that's, I guess, either one of those, from what I'm hearing from my board, is fine options for us. So
Okay.
you guys can decide. Stacy, are you good with that? Either John's or mine, and see what happens?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Dean, I think at the bottom of all this, we're wrapping ourselves around the axle on this 150. And I think the key point is going to be, as we go in the next couple of months, looking at next year's budget, and having changes, maybe or maybe not, in all the different town departments, is the baseline for the library going to be the for the town's portion, the $1,248,000 or the 1.4?
That's Peggy's point. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
think that's-
Jean's point.
Yeah, that's my point. I wanted to stay, what the agreement was, you know, going for this year, we were gonna get them back to,
The
They're
1-2.
right, I don't want to mess with their base. We've spent a lot of, you know, we've all done what we were supposed to do, so I just don't want to risk, it's not risk, but you know what I mean? I don't want to take that in any way away from them because they're budgeting moving forward. It's not so much for next year, but then it's the year after. It's how you then look at the numbers, and that's what I'm concerned about. So the base stays the same. That's what I'm trying to get to, is the base stays the same.
And that's what we're trying to solve for, Fillmore,
Right.
is to not inflate the base. So to keep at that 1-2, so that we are where we expected we would be, getting the library back to their budget line, which they had 2 years ago.
And then as Peggy just described, there's the MOU is in place. It's starting to, you know, they're trying to negotiate that. So that will be much clearer, but everything will be cleaner. And I think they, I'd use that term, it's cleaner now that we can go from one year to the next fiscal year. And Peggy's got this MOU that they're working on. So that will, as John said, that will, moving forward, that will make sure that this is all clean.
And just one further question for Nicole and Sunny. Of the 150 that we approved last spring, you know, forever ago, it seems like. How much of that was, and you don't have to answer that now, but how much of that was sort of one-time expenses of hiring movers to do this, that, and the other, and setting up and opening up things, versus the hiring of new staff? In other words, well, you know, you tell me, but if of that 150, X dollars was one-time expenses, and Y dollars was the start of ongoing expenses. So you might want to.
No, I have that right here.
I
Yeah.
can tell you that now.
Yeah, you're skipping ahead. That was part of my presentation for the current fiscal year, but I did pull that out, and it's in the spreadsheet from our original request for those funds. So I'm rounding, but you do have the specific numbers because I resent them. So approximately 60,000 was salaries and benefits. The rest was library materials, supplies, printing, insurance, facilities, supplies, and the grand reopening. So,
And then the one set, and you to offset the salaries was the 117.
so yeah, and I have that here too. Let me find it. That's not it.
Yeah, my
I
compliments.
have a note here. Yeah, so with so I hate to make assumptions, but with the assumption that that loan will be forgiven of the 117, it would be easy for us to return 65,000 of that to the town. That would be the 60,000 for salaries plus the 5,000 for a grand reopening celebration that may not happen.
So let's.
I think one of the other,
Gene,
one of the other questions
ahead.
that I think came up right on that line for the salary line was the fluctuation of that line, of that number across the line. What was, is that right, Gene? We were talking.
Yeah. So Stace, you want to,
That may be 3 pay periods in certain months.
if you scroll down, I think it'll be there, Sunny.
I think they're probably, are you
The-
talking
oh,
about
the
January?
monthly
Salary.
fluctuation? Yeah.
Right.
The monthly
Yeah.
fluctuation in the salaries. Yep. That is a pay period thing. So, and it's annotated at the top. So January has 3 pay periods. You see that noted there. And that's why that number is higher.
But then it flattens out at the end of the year to this, I think it's like 72K per month. Is that right? I can't see it. I'm not in a good place
Yeah.
where I can see that.
70.
Yep, those months all have 2 pay periods per month. So same pay periods per month, same output.
Okay,
Okay,
We're paid every other
Right.
week.
okay.
So, yeah.
So
got it.
my compliments about the PPP loan, but your salaries are 70,000 a month and you know, so you had the 117, so that really should not have to pay it back. So I just want to compliment you. Some of those loans were not easy to get. So that's all.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
It was a
I
lot of
agree.
paperwork. Thank you.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
I know.
And I appreciate, doing it because it definitely, it was hard to do. It was difficult, but it was definitely worth it. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so again, I think John said I said it 1,000 times. I'm gonna say it 1,001. Not gonna let the library go under. So even
Thank
if-
you. And I really appreciate that, Jean. And I think part of the concern on my part is just that, to my knowledge, the library has never requested or received a special appropriation from the town. We've never gone back for money mid-year. And so I'm just really unfamiliar with, what that process would be like. How do I appropriately budget for money that's not guaranteed? I'm just really unfamiliar with that. So I really appreciate your sentiments, and I will learn how to do that, and
Thank you.
and we'll make it work for the auditor. And
Right, we
and
will
all
make
that.
it
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
And what works for you guys, we'll make it work so we're all on the same page moving forward. And I guess since you haven't asked, it's also new territory for us. So, so we will just keep the conversation going. We will make sure that we're just doing everything to keep the books clean, to make sure you maintain your base, to make sure you can still do your operations. So I guess your board can reach out to Stacy, Nicole. I don't know if you want to reach out to Stacy or
I
Sunny
will.
when you guys decide which way you want to do it.
Mhm.
And if indeed you need more, then you come back and we'll have another conversation. But at least that way we close the books on the last fiscal year. It's clean moving forward, and it doesn't run the risk of altering your base as we move forward.
Got it.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, Sunny,
Okay.
and that makes sense.
Makes
I
more
think that-
sense. It makes much more sense to me now than at the beginning of this conversation. So thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely.
Thank you for your
Well, I
patience
think we were
as
all
I'm learning
kind
the
of fuddling
process.
through it. Right. I think we're all trying to
Yep.
fuddle through it.
And it's really the point of this conversation tonight to get us, on board and in alignment with one another so that we all know what's going on both sides. Because as we're preparing to start our budget for 21, 22, we just want to make sure we know where we're starting from.
Right. No, and I appreciate your time and effort. I appreciate all the documents you got to us. That was great. And it was very helpful. So I appreciate that.
Would you
Thank
like
you.
me to move on to a quick building
Please.
project
Yes,
update?
I
Okay.
do. All the good stuff, please. Thank you.
Okay, this one is really good, guys. Okay, so you see the futures campaign here laid out. This shows exactly what we're expecting, what has already come in. You see the right-hand column is getting very small as far as amount outstanding. So the summary is that through September, payments for this project have been approved for the amount of approximately 14.4 million. So there's about 60,000 left to be spent. The library is down to, we have these 2 grants outstanding, a few outstanding pledges, and the amount that needs to be raised is down to just under 140, which we've, Nicole's done a lot of research, and it was very much in the realm of what other projects, library projects are seeing. And the great news is that the library has sufficient funds available to complete that remaining 600,000. So we'll be able to front that money for those invoices while we wait for example, the 200,000 from the Connecticut State Library. We know those funds won't be released until after the project is completed and a mountain of paperwork is done. But the board has planned for that, has that money set aside for that purpose. So we're out of the danger zone, which is great, a
Good.
great feeling. And that's all I had prepared for that. And any questions about that? This is the simple one.
That's the good news.
Okay.
Good job.
Good
That's it.
job.
That's the real easy
Yeah.
one.
And I
Okay,
still
so-
wake up for a tour.
You have to come for a
I will.
tour.
From the outside, it looks beautiful, but I will.
You're gonna
come.
love it. You're gonna love it.
Jean, John, and Justin, I need you in that building. You will be
All right.
amazed.
It's amazing. Everything, all the details. It's just really, they did an amazing job. It is a beautiful, many extra unique characteristics. It's just an amazing facility. We're going to be very proud as folks, as Madison residents, to have a library like that in our town. It's a fantastic job.
Can't wait to come by. I want to bring my kids. They ask about it all the time. So
Good. Okay, we already talked about it quite a bit, but I do have a quick summary to give you about the current fiscal year. Apologies. I'll try not to, restate anything.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, so for this fiscal year, just some updates on how our forecast is varying from the budget that we had, our board had approved at the beginning. Our overall forecast for salaries and benefits has decreased by just under $4,000. So our forecast for salary expenses, part of it, has decreased by $38,000. That's because of what I explained already about freezing several of those part-time positions that we were expecting to need sooner. However, what is unfortunately evening that out is an increase of $63,000 in necessary pension contributions. It's something that's unavoidable, and we've been advised that we can expect those required contributions to increase over the next few years. So that's unfortunate. The only solace that we have is that everyone's having the same problem. I've heard that's just across the board for anyone who still has pension obligations.
Sonny, refresh my memory. I think you had said that it's the same problem that the town has seen, that the actuaries have decided that town-related employees live a lot longer.
Exactly. So that's something we have in common. People who work at town hall and people who work at the library are very happy, healthy people. The actuarial tables have been updated to reflect a longer lifespan.
Well,
Stacy, are you happy?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just
you
curious.
can tell I have no stress level at all.
This change was made before the pandemic.
There you go.
Clearly.
But again, just so everybody realizes, none of your current employees are on a defined benefit pension.
Correct. That pension plan was frozen in, I think, 2014.
Yeah.
It's just our continued obligations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you
Okay.
have no real control over that.
Yeah. Thank you. Fillmore.
Unfortunately.
That's a good point.
Yeah. We decreased our library program expenses by about $10,000 because virtual programming is a lot cheaper than in-person programming. So we're going to take a small win there. And then a good news is our forecast for the total physical plant costs has decreased by almost $13,000. Cleaning costs went up, of course. Cleaning costs are going up everywhere, but utilities went down, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The solar power was turned on, so we have additional solar power now helping us to lower that electricity bill. That's been very effective. We don't have a full month. No, we don't have a full quarter of stats on that, and it will fluctuate throughout the year. But our initial findings are very good. So we've updated that forecast. And then elevator costs are just something funky that went down because of when the 1-year warranty that comes with it started. We were able to decrease that. So it will be what we had budgeted next year, but this year we get a little savings because of like 9 or 10 months of a warranty. So that's good. And then, of course, the PPP funding I already talked about. So I prepped a little bit about the risks to the budget, things we're really watching and keeping a careful eye on. Nicole already mentioned the our large April fundraising event that is usually done in person may have to be done virtually again this year. Thankfully, they know how to do that. So, but we're keeping an eye on it. COVID-19 related expenses, of course, you see that highlighted down here. So we're tracking that very carefully, expecting it to be about 14,000. We'll see. And then there is one issue of a COVID-related salary disruption. So while most of the construction delays don't impact our annual operating budget, because of the delays to the building project, Laura Downs, who is our liaison for it, is still working on it. We had expected by July 1st, construction would be completely done. She would transition to 5 hours a week of minimal work to finish up the paperwork for the remaining grants, the Connecticut State Library and all of that. Because there were delays to that process, she's working a lot more hours right now. We're obviously working to minimize the impact. And the good thing is that it's only Q1. So we have a good track record at this point of being able to mitigate some of those unexpected things. But that's our watch list. We're looking at it really carefully. We'll keep you updated. And then so the last thing I prepped for you is a quick operational update, because of course the operations affect the budget. So since July, we've been offering 38 hours of library service a week, including our takeout and delivery services and doing all the stuff we normally do, except virtually or over the phone or online. In September, we added 12 hours a week of public access. So we do have public access now. It's not a lot, but we wanted to test it for a month, work all the kinks out, make sure that we are able to do it in a really safe way. The reason for the delay is it both construction related and also the governor's guidelines for public libraries are quite lengthy. So there was a lot of plexiglass ordered, a lot of signs put up, all that kind of thing. But the good news is the first month, which was by appointment, has gone really smoothly. We are dropping the need for appointments and expanding hours on November 2nd. So we're just 2 weeks away. At that point, our public access hours will go up to 22 hours a week with no appointments necessary. The governor raised the capacity limit. He didn't change any of the guidelines, so the protocols will still be very strict. But with that large capacity limit, we just won't need the appointments. We're really, really happy about that. And then in January, we are anticipating hiring for the positions that have been vacant for 6 months. With the addition of those part-time staff members, we'll be able to expand not just hours, but services. We'll be able to add 2 more evenings, full services on Saturday, and 3 more mornings as well. So it'll go up to 32 hours a week. I lost that piece of paper. 32 hours a week. 38 hours a week. I can't believe I rounded down instead of rounding up. So in January, we have planned to go up to 38 hours a week with those additional staff members. And because that staff includes the 2 part-time custodians that we have been planning to hire, we'll also be able to expand our services. Right now, bathrooms aren't available, seating isn't available, and that's because we can't meet the governor's guidelines for cleaning the surfaces multiple times a day. So with the addition of in-house services, instead of just having a cleaning service come through once a day, we'll be able to have them do that multiple times a day. And our patrons will be so much happier. They want the hours, they want the seating areas because they're beautiful. And we are really ready to provide that for them. Now that we have met all the guidelines, we're ready. We're able to expand both safely and as soon as possible. So that's our plan.
Good.
That's it for me.
Thank you. Any questions from board members for the library?
Thanks.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Oh,
and
you
thoroughness.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
Stacy, I'll be in contact
Yes.
with you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Good night.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Good night. Okay, next to discuss and take action to approve 2 donations totaling $20,000 from Neighbor to Neighbor to help families in need of assistance due to COVID-19. I need a motion.
So move.
Second, and
Second,
discussion. I think, is Scott here or no?
No,
Okay.
but Catherine Barden is, so I just moved
Catherine.
her.
Okay. Hi, Catherine. Catherine, you're muted.
Comfortable
There we go.
here.
There
you
we
go.
go.
Hi, Catherine.
I'm used to doing youth meetings, so I have like a fun background that I haven't changed.
That's fun. Go ahead.
This is another donation to our COVID impact line that was started through Neighbor to Neighbor and the Guilford Savings Bank. It was originally a $30,000 donation, which was expanded, and now we're getting 20,000 more because we spent all 50 of the original donation, which is amazing and scary at the same time. So we have now approved 115 different applications to 59 different individual households in Madison. And we're still getting new applications for new families on a weekly basis. So this money will help go towards offsetting lost wages because of job loss or job interruption because of COVID. And it also goes to help pay for childcare and a bunch of other things. So, I mean, we can't thank Neighbor enough for their generosity in helping people get through this really unprecedented, crazy time.
They're unbelievable. They just, over the years, they have done so much and they've really stepped it up during this pandemic. So that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any questions for Catherine?
I think our gratitude goes out to Neighbor to Neighbor. Our gratitude, the whole town's gratitude goes for their hard work and for their contribution.
Mhm.
Yeah. We couldn't do our job without them at this point. It really is incredible how they're helping families get through.
Yeah, it is
Appreciate
amazing.
it.
They're Roger
Thank
that.
you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you for coming tonight, Catherine. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take
Have a good
care.
night.
Review of the financials, 2020-21 tax collection status. It's all good news. So that's something. Go ahead,
You'll
Stace.
see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a tax collector's report for the last 11 years, I believe, in the last 10-year average. We're pretty much right on track. So this was our collections through October 1st. So we started out slow and we're right to where we should be as of the first half of the year. So we'll see where January ends up, but we did catch up, which is
That's
wonderful
great.
news. Tax collector has been very busy.
That's
Stacy,
great.
refresh my memory. Do people still have another week or so before the penalty?
Actually, Fillmore, it was only till October 1st. It wasn't 3 months from the due date of August 1st, so it was July 1st, so it went to October 1st.
Okay, but they don't, if there's normally it's due July 1st, but you have no penalty until August 1st.
Yes, the way that the executive order was written was it was extended till October 1st, so it did not go from August to the
Okay.
3 months. It went from
Change with COVID.
So they're, so if somebody wanders in now, they're paying the penalty.
correct.
Okay.
We'll still take their money though.
Mhm.
You better get down there, Phil.
All right.
Yeah, Fillmore, you better go.
You better
right
get down there.
They're open late Thursday night. You're good.
No more McScrooge here.
Okay, review of the the budget workshop calendar. So that's going out to everybody. I cannot stress enough that we go through this. Everyone looks at the calendar. Nobody makes a comment. We go to have the meeting and Lauren has to change the meeting. So I am begging you to check the calendar. put it on your calendar. Handwrite it, whatever, so that we don't have to do that last minute shuffle of dates that causes Lauren to lose her mind.
And once approved, Lauren does nicely send out invites to everybody,
she
so
does.
it will go on their calendar.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions. I'm looking on the second page. The Wednesday, halfway down, Wednesday, March 24th, where we have a tri-board budget review. And then that's the day that we have to come up with one. Do we, are we saying that we would have, that the Board of Finance would have a meeting to adopt the budget the week before on the 17th? Or would we meet after the tri-board on the 24th to officially adopt the budget?
Lauren, can you share that document?
Hold on. I have to email it out of the
Oh,
other side.
I could try to find it.
Can you?
Yep.
So Lauren, do you understand what I'm saying? That on Wednesday, March 24th, there, after we've had our workshops and whatnot, it says a tri-board budget review.
Mhm.
We have to have listed on the calendar to make everything official. We have to have a Board of Finance meeting to formally adopt the budget so we can take action.
The budget is due on the
24th. But, you know,
Yeah,
this-
so
it's a very legal picky ease here, but I think there should be somewhere, it should show that the Board of Finance has a meeting to adopt the budget.
Okay, that may be their is that their regular meeting in March?
Yeah, but we're
no,
not
it's the
adopting
week
the budget.
after.
Oh, maybe so.
And
Yeah,
we
that's-
should change the date to the 2021.
Good.
Yeah, okay, I'm just being picky here. I don't want to end up at the last moment saying, oh gee, we have not, put on the calendar, officially notified with all the, 60 days or whatever it is, to have a meeting. So you're saying that would be part of the regular meeting on the 17th.
That would be part of the 24th meeting. That tri-board review would be a Board of Finance called meeting, right, Lauren?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we would just
But
vote at that
I'm
meeting.
happy, Fillmore, to make that language a little more clear, that it's not just a budget workshop, that you guys would be having an actual called meeting to make a vote.
Yeah, I think we should do that just to clarify the legal people who might be.
Okay.
I'll continue to make my argument that March 17th is really not the best night to have a meeting.
I think you made that argument last year too.
I did, and no one listened. Thank you very much.
What's March?
I listen.
That was,
I listen.
that was the beginning of COVID.
I know.
What's March
I
17th?
think that was my last party. Fillmore.
St. Patrick's Day, Fillmore.
Oh, okay.
It's Halloween, I think.
All righty. Thank you.
I'm
So
perfectly willing to do it some other evening.
Yeah, do it a different night. I think
Tuesday.
somebody implored us to look at the budget, look at the workshops.
I think that's the regular meeting night, isn't it, Lauren?
It is.
It is.
Change it. We should just change it now
Yeah.
if you
I
want.
mean, I think it's smart. I don't know. Can we
We'll
just
move it
make
to
for
Thursday?
Yeah, just make it. Is everyone okay with Thursday?
Now, sure. Sorry.
You're the boss.
So this will go to the Board of Selectmen on Monday, or did it already go to the Board of Selectmen?
No, we'll go to them Monday night.
Oh, there it
So
is.
then in November, the Board of Finance can vote on it.
Exactly.
Okay, then I had
Scott
another,
Murphy will appreciate moving. Oh, he won't be at ours though, so that's all right.
then I had
What'd you say, Fillmore?
just one other question, down a couple of lines below that. the Board of Finance workshop and review at Polson Auditorium is Wednesday, the 28th. But the legal notice has to be done the day before on Tuesday, the 27th, with corrections by the Thursday, the 29th. Is that going to, so I guess we're assuming that we'll take action on the, and that it won't be more than a few squiggly pages. Is that right, Stace?
Yeah, we'll get them a draft and then chances are you'll change a line or two and then that's really an internal deadline for us. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's all right. I'm good with that.
Okay.
That's my birthday, just so you know, the 27th.
Oh,
Yes, we're talking about April.
All right, good. All right. Review, my favorite thing to talk about. Committee process and budget CIP committee process and budget process.
So what I can say, and I don't know if Peggy wants to chime in at this point or if she wants to wait until her report, but the document was submitted to the committee on October 15th. And we are holding our first workshop with the committee next week on the 28th at 6 o'clock, where we're just going to go over an initial calendar to set up these meetings. Believe it or not, the crunch time really begins, with the holidays in November and December. So we're pushing to get a calendar set next week.
Peggy, do you want to go through it now, or do you want to wait till your report? Doesn't matter.
No, I mean, I didn't really have much more to add. I think the letter, that the transmittal letter kind of walks through the approach that myself, the staff, as well as the Board of Selectmen took on the CIP. We obviously have a lot of unknowns over the next 12 months, including, the referendum issues. And then also because we have this big facility study, so that's required us to really postpone some important decisions until we get some of the feedback from that. So I think the letter is pretty self-explanatory if you've had a chance to read it, about the approach. And we understand that this is going to be something we talk about a lot, and there'll probably be some changes to it based on the information that comes out of some of these studies over the next month or two. So I think it's a good first draft and it's a good proposal. And so, I think it's going to be an ongoing dialogue with all the boards about CIP.
Yep. Good. So we're set with our committee members. I'm going to ask, Justin, I think that's you. And Jude's not here. And Jude's not here. But if we could just try to get, every meeting an update where we are, what you guys are talking about, with things, I think that would be helpful. I'd like to actually make sure every meeting we're spending some time on the CIP. I think it'll help then when we get to the budget process.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about that? Okay, review financials.
So unless anybody has any questions.
I think Fillmore does.
Oh, of course he does. Okay.
Is that sarcasm?
No.
No.
Just pointing a fact, that's all.
Yeah, maybe a question for Peggy. I'm looking at the pallet money and the LoCIP money. Is there, are we assured that we're going to get that from the state? Are they going to hold us for ransom?
No, as far as my understanding is, we shouldn't have any issues. So I think we just have to kind of continue on as budgeted and as planned. So I haven't heard anything otherwise. Stacy, I don't know if you've heard anything different. So far, they've been, we have been receiving things even through COVID, right? So I don't think there's any concern right now that won't happen.
Okay. Good, just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, liaison reports.
I have one,
Wait, hold on, Ken. Fillmore's going.
okay, I'm sorry, very briefly. There's an ad hoc committee reviewing the solar panels at Polson and at Hand. And we opened the proposals. We had 7 people who submitted proposals. And we're bringing 2 of them back for in-person presentations next week. And both of them would have generating costs. The cost we would pay for the power would save us several $1,000s a year. So they're coming in under what we're now paying to Eversource, and we'd be taking another step toward making us a little bit of a greener town, getting a little bit more off the grid. So that should be coming, Peggy, to you. I would think after, in a couple of weeks after the presentations in person next week. So.
Thank you. Kenny?
Yeah, just from the police commission, I guess the Board of Ed asked for 2 additional police officers at with help with the schools. I think he's able to kind of work through that within the existing budget. And then something else that kind of came up was I guess from a signage perspective and Jack taking, or Chief Drum taking over the majority of those of that activity from, I think, Dave in the town, because it's easier for him to do it. And the conversation was, can we take a line item out of the town budget and move it over to the police commission, the police department, to help with that process? So that was something they wanted to talk about during this budget session.
Wait, can you say that again? You got to unmute, Ken.
What did you ask me?
Can you just say that last part again? So they want to do what?
Yeah, so I guess what, as it relates to town signage, street signage, things of that nature, I guess that rather than waiting for the town and the surveys and all that stuff to go through it, it's a process that they can go by to do it easier on their side. So they were talking about just taking over that from the town and you know, talking about moving those lines in the budget.
Okay.
So
thank you.
So what we're talking about, doing stop signs and one-way street signs and all that sort of stuff, or what kind of signs?
Peggy, you're muted if you're trying to.
Haven't had an extensive conversation with the chief, but we had a preliminary discussion. I think that you know, Public Works has been a little bit of a bottleneck in terms of kind of just rolling out kind of routine sign replacement, stop signs, street signs, things like that. And Jack felt that, you know, that there might be a way for the police department to handle that. And it would involve a service, from what I understand. So he was going to look through about what the cost would be versus what it would mean from a time and material standpoint from Public Works. I just haven't seen any of that yet, but I do think it's kind of one of those routine things that, you know, gets kind of low on the totem pole, so to speak, for Public Works at times. And so, and it's
exactly,
yeah. And it's been a point of frustration, I know, from the police commission and for the police department. So, I think there'll be more, but that'll be part of the budget process, you know, so we'll have more details and understand a little bit more what the possible costing would be to do that.
Yeah, and he just wanted to kind of tee it up so that we could be thinking about that during this upcoming budget season. So it was just something that was, you know, brought up at the last meeting, and I thought it made sense just to make everybody here aware of it. That's all.
No, that's helpful. Thanks, Kenny. Anyone else? Any other updates? Okay, first Selectwoman.
Okay, I'll be brief since this is starting to become like a Board of Selectmen meeting.
Don't bite your tongue over my dead body.
So real quickly on the early retirement incentive programs, we heard back from phase 1 employees, and then we're still waiting on those included in phase 2. And so in November, we'll be kind of rolling out where we are on both those programs and kind of some of the reorganization ideas that we'll be having for town government based on employee retirement decisions. So that's hopeful to talk about in November. And then from a study standpoint, we have an RFP out now on the emergency management services study. And so we'll be looking to get back, proposals on that. And then I'd like to also organize a selection committee that would include a member of the Board of Finance. I mentioned this to Jean. So, whoever makes the most sense and has the time would be part of that selection committee. And that'll also include people from public safety as well as Board of Selectmen. Town facility study is still undergoing. They're in full throttle. They've been doing interviews with staff, and I can see them running around looking at roofs and things like that. So we know they're hard at work, and the hope is that's going to be wrapping up in November for ideally, I think, completion in December. The vehicle study, they've also done a lot of work on. I will give you a heads up on that, as I'm sure we probably expected, we might have to really rethink our replacement schedule for large vehicles. And so there's going to be some recommendations that are going to be quite daunting, but I think it's really about how we decide to adopt to a different replacement cycle over time. And so that'll be part of the CIP discussion and the budget discussion, but that report should be finalized by November as well. And Youth and Family Services is also in process. So those are all should be wrapped up easily by the end of the year. The ambulance one, though, is not going to be, probably since we're just going out to RFP, that timeline is going to look more like a February, March type of completion. So those are in process. I know you had been notified about some special appropriations that the board is going to be talking about on Monday, one relating to the storm removal and just typical things that we see after large storms. The other one is relating to some issues we encountered during the last storm for emergency management. And it's a technology upgrade involving, we lost our internet service. We have no backup to internet service, and our dispatch relies on internet service. And so we were kind of caught, and this is the first storm that this has happened, but what we found is that other towns have a backup system. So there's some detail on that more will be forthcoming to you about that. And I think Sam had sent around some information. And then the third thing just to mention, which Jean, you might be aware of this, but we've been getting, and we're not alone, all the towns in Connecticut are getting a lot of pushback from FEMA. FEMA on COVID requests are, for some reason, denying things that we would have thought would have been a no-brainer, like N95 masks in April that were for first responders, things like that. So the good thing is the state has stepped forward to say, submit what you're not getting from FEMA or what you're concerned about not getting reimbursed, and the state's going to go through a pretty thorough review process using some of the funds that they've allocated. So we don't know where we'll come out on this, but I know Stacy and her team has been exceptionally dedicated to responding to questions and following this through different processes. So I think we'll be updating you more about what we can expect. And this is about the special appropriation we already did. So this is through June 30th. So it's money that we've already spent. It's just the hope to get a chunk of it back. So so that's going to be kind of an ongoing discussion. And like I said, we're not the only town. And that was kind of it from my end. We are going to be working on putting together the budget letter to send out to the departments in November, so they can start thinking about their next year's budget. And then CIP, as I mentioned, is kind of there and we'll be ramping up soon to start reviewing those projects. And that's it from my end.
Thank you. I did want to, before we go into the budget, and this may be something for Lauren, I wanted to get a collection of all the studies that are being done, and the manpower study, because I know people have been requesting over the couple of budget cycles for new staffing, but I know we've done studies, so I'd like to, and Lauren, I can just call you, I'd just like to get a collection of all those studies and how it affects the budget. Because I think, especially for the Board of Finance, we just need to know when people are asking for things, if that is in reality, we've paid for these studies, we've had experts come in, is that what their recommendation is for things? So, and I can
The
give
one
you
you're talking about, the one that was done through Deb Millardo about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, that one, I don't, anything that's going to impact the budget, I'd like to have, just a bunch, have all the information in one place for the budget, even for the ambulance. And I know it's not called the ambulance study, but for that, I'd like to see the RF, like if we could just get all of that together to have a better idea of those studies and what we're funding, that would be great.
Yeah, I think we can easily pull all that together, so.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thanks, Peggy.
Okay, great.
Citizens comment, anyone out there?
I'm going to allow Gus Horvath to speak.
Gus, unmute yourself.
I'll let him stay muted.
There he
Okay.
goes. Hi, Gus.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I have 2 items that are both very brief. The first one is I'd like to congratulate this Board of Finance. I believe they have set a world's record for the amount of time spent on one agenda item tonight. It was over 50 minutes. The second item in relation to that is I was wondering if you might, Gene, check with the auditors as to how they're going to treat the infamous $150,000. Is it going to end up as a carryover, as a reserve, and end up in the assigned fund balance? Or is it going to end up as a carryover into the unassigned fund balance, and then therefore would be available for special appropriation if you had to do it that way? I don't know the answer to that question, but it just seems that there's confusion as to how it might be treated. And my question was, where is it going to show up when the audit is complete? Is it going to show up as an assigned number in some as like a reserve fund is every year, or is it going to show up in the unassigned fund balance?
Okay.
Because I think that may help you determine what you're going to do with that, with those dollars in the future.
Thank you.
That's it.
Oh, that's
was-
good, Gus.
Yeah,
You
well,
made-
it's almost
you
my
made up
bed.
some- you made
It's
up some
almost my
time for me.
bedtime.
Thank you, Gus. Take care.
Okay.
Good. Anyone else, Lauren?
Nope.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Good night, everyone.